My name is Matthew Hoey. I'm from Cambridge, Massachusetts. That's where I live. I'm an international security analyst. I've consulted for clients such as the United States intelligence community, private sector, NGOs. My background is in missile defense, broad spectrum of international security issues, nuclear forces, space technology. But at the moment, my job, I found myself working on a peace issue through a strange series of events. So I'm responsible for handling all the international outreach, basically taking the message of what's happening in Gangjeong village in the resistance against the naval base and presenting that information to the American and English language audience. Yes. Gangjeong village is population about 1,800. One of the most picturesque villages on an island that may very well be one of the most beautiful in the world. Jeju Island is located off of the southwest coast of South Korea, a little less, just a hair less than 300 miles from the Chinese mainland. It is a 3-time UNESCO World Natural Heritage Site designee. It's the only single geographic point on the planet that has such a designation. It's home to 9 UNESCO geoparks. It's designated a global biosphere reserve. It's incredibly unique. It's one of the great treasures of all humanity. At the moment, I'm sitting probably about 20 yards from the perimeter fence of the naval base. It's one of the largest naval bases on the planet. It's under construction, about 10% complete. On the other side of the fence, you go about 1.8 kilometers, and you have one of those UNESCO World Natural Heritage Sites. During the day, if I put the camera up over the fence, you'd see one of the most beautiful shorelines you've ever laid your eyes on. So, I'll just give you a brief background, actually. Jeju Island was designated the Island of World Peace, and this was done in 2005. The reason for this designation was the South Korean government, starting in 1948, committed a genocide against its own people. Here on Jeju Island is where it happened. 90% of the villages were burned to the ground. An estimated 30 to 60,000 people were killed. 1 in 3 were either women or children. So there's a very painful history. So you flash forward, and it took them a long time to come to terms with this, but President Roh, the now since deceased former president, designated Jeju the Island of World Peace. They gave them about 10 months with that designation, and they stuffed a military base down their throats. So, if you ask the military would say that they had a vote and the people asked for this base. Truth be told, population 1,800, 87 people had the opportunity to vote to approve this military base. So 87 people chose the destiny for an entire village, for an entire island. And so we have this military base here under construction. Exactly. So the vote that led to the base with the 87 votes, the mayor who saw that was immediately sacked by the village. The new mayor came in, conducted a vote. When everybody had an opportunity to take part in the referendum, 94% of villagers said they were against it. Of course, the government and the military said that we're not going to honor that vote. That mayor that took control of the village and is actually leading this resistance, at this moment, he's sitting in a prison on Jeju Island. It's shocking. He's sitting in a prison for trying to defend his village against an illegal vote, an illegal military base. The base is going to be home to up to 2 aircraft carriers, 2 subs, 20 destroyers, the Aegis ballistic missile defense system. It's a bullseye on these people who have already been through so much. That's a farce. They tried to basically go to a very humble village of fishermen and farmers, modest people. I mean, incredibly bright. It's a very warm, tightly knit community, but they went to people who they knew they could play on their needs. And they gave these people visions of Chinese tourists coming here with hands full of Korean won, ready to spend money. And they said that this secure military facility that will be home to both U.S. and South Korean destroyers would bring in thousands of tourists, and come to find out that that was nothing more than a lie and a long series of many lies. Well, they've been mobilizing actively for 5 years now, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all around the clock. And at this moment, about a 10-minute walk from here, the entire community is on a street corner having a concert and a candlelight vigil. In the United States, something like that would happen every now and then, and you'd be pretty relieved as a peace activist to see such care, such resistance to militarism. Here in Gangjeong, it's every single night. This is an active, nonviolent resistance, unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. And we've had people from the older generation here, and they say the same thing. This is the front lines in the war for international peace. You know, just the fact of the matter is the single greatest national security threat facing South Korea is the ballistic missile attack from the north. Here I am at the southernmost tip of South Korea, on the west coast shore, on the southernmost coast of the southernmost island. This isn't quite the location you would expect to fit with that argument of this is about addressing national security threat facing us from the north. This is about the south. This is about south and west force projection. Analysts in the United States who are on the conservative pro-military side have talked about the importance of this base for U.S. national security policy. And at this point, the South Korean Navy is not hiding the fact that this is about China. This is about this very crucial maritime area. I was at a conference which explains the proper dress. I usually don't dress in a shirt and tie when I go to construction sites. But I was at the United Nations South Korean government's 10th annual disarmament conference on Jeju Island. And I was told by a gentleman that who has ties to the U.S. military. I'm not going to name him, of course. But he says to me that, Matt, you have to realize that things aren't going good for us right now in Japan, and it'll be nice to have another place to put our ships. He was referring to Okinawa. So, the war hawks aren't being shy. They know how important this base is. And he finished the conversation when I said, well, is it going to be a formal port? Or how does this work to bring U.S. ships in? He says, Matt, any port in a storm. That's how it is with Korea. When the storm hits, we can use whatever we want. Well, we break it down into 4 different distinct areas. First is the human rights issue. You basically have people who are being targeted, not because of criminal affiliations or of having committed any crime. For example, I can see it from here. 15 yards away, there's a sign that lists 70 different individuals and 4 different peace organizations. It's a warning to them that if they're seen near this base site, they'll be arrested. Recently, 200 villagers received letters calling them in for questioning by the police. I've heard that when they arrive for questioning, they're asked to identify other activists. If they don't show up, they can be fined or arrested. So we have the human rights dimension. There's the legal dimension, which I've already explained with the vote. It was an illegal vote that led to the base. Not only did those 87 people vote, there was no transparency, no ballots. They voted by applause. And a local newspaper called Hala Ilbo, here on Jeju Island, reported that the base was approved a couple hours before the vote was even complete. We go to environmental. I connect environmental to cultural. If you go over that fence, they've recently discovered human remains and sites of a village that dates back more than 2,000 years. It's a very important site in terms of the cultural heritage here in Jeju Island. The Navy's doing their best to just tear through this as quick as possible to prevent any more archaeological excavations. So there's a lot of different things pushing and pulling on one another. It's a unique situation. You don't run into this very often with base construction projects. Absolutely. Well, you know what the strategy is here, and we have different models to study with this trend that's happening. You know, the United States claims that we're cutting the military budget, and that's not really quite the case. Our operations are getting cheaper, and this is a fine example. You have another country building a military base that we're going to be able to use at no cost to us. You know, China is the threat. You know, Leon Panetta, the U.S. Defense Secretary, recently stated that U.S. economic and security future is right here, right where I'm sitting right now. But if you look on a map and you look at China, this base that's being built here and will be outfitted with the Aegis ballistic missile defense system, we're selling that same system to India. We've sold the same system to Japan. We've sold the same system to Australia. So you have this half circle that's coming around on China. And then there's also the buildup coming out of Eastern Europe with missile defense. We're not going to do it alone. We're diffusing the responsibility. We're distributing the responsibility. We're going to distribute the damage, the wreckage, the casualties, and the spilling of blood. Other people will share the damage with us. So, I mean, the United States can barely wage the two wars we're involved in now. The trick is to make sure that when the time comes, if it comes, that there'll be U.S. ships in this port. You know, when I bring that up to South Korean military officials and say that is your government prepared for a rapid escalation scenario between China and the United States, where, God forbid, the USS George Washington's in your port, do you know your country is going to be pulled into our war? And are your people prepared to spill their children's blood for a United States national security failure? And once the ships get here, that's pretty much, they lose control of their destiny. And South Koreans will lose control of their destiny here on this island. Their future will depend on U.S. strategic policy. To arm China's rivals to the teeth. I mean, well, South Korea is not quite a rival to China. China's South Korea's #1 trading partner. But in the case of India, we're selling them every weapon, not in the name of their national security, just every weapon we can sell to them. Tensions between China and their neighbors are good for U.S. good for U.S. policy. We're kind of setting other people up to do our dirty work without them quite knowing. I think we foresee the possibility that the United States could have a war in China, and we want to make sure that all the pieces are in place for that coalition force long before it happens. You know, there's this argument that China's the big boogeyman threat. And, you know, I keep coming back to that with U.S. policymakers. You know, right now the United States is running 12 nuclear-powered Nimitz-class carriers. Just for example, with the Nimitz class, China just built their very first aircraft carrier. Even conservative pro-military experts in the United States are saying it'll be a decade before they can even land a jet on it. The carrier is a refurbished old model carrier, and it's also, they say that it's going to be used for scientific research in China. That new carrier is the cornerstone right now for U.S. paranoia about China's military. Anybody who's paying close attention doesn't buy it. They're scare tactics. China has a modest military. It's a deterrent-based military. I mean, just as a fine example, you look at the U.S. strategic nuclear forces that we have deployed right now, ready to go. You look at China, they have about 180 deployed nuclear weapons. Their military is built on a defensive posture. It's a defensive military. We're going to force China to take it to the next level. China could easily up their nuclear arsenal by 4 or 5-fold in 12 to 18 months. I just don't understand the logic behind trying to push their buttons. Absolutely. You know, the most important thing here for the villagers is they want people to know the story of their struggle. They've been fighting for 5 years now. It's a flawless, nonviolent resistance, and they want nothing more than for people to share their story. We have a website. So it's savejejuisland.org. We hope people will go on there, read about what's happening here, and just share a news article with a friend. We have tons of news and fact sheets and pictures and videos. Go on there, find something interesting, share it with a friend, share it with a fellow peace activist. This island is 22 hours away from my home, and you know, a lot of people don't know what's happening. I was at a peace conference not 2 hours ago, and I was with diplomats and national security experts who weren't even aware that a base was being built down the street. So we just want people to simply share the story of what's taken place here in Jeju Island. And that'd be the greatest gift that they can give to these people on the front lines in the fight for international peace.